In January of 2020, a young bull moose was stuck on the train tracks near the crossing of routes 103 and 131 in Proctorsville. The Vermont Department of Fish and Wildlife was brought in to evaluate the situation and figure out a solution. Could it be removed and rescued? Was that even possible? Or would the animal need to be put down? Soon after, and just days before the COVID-19 shutdown, Game Warden Kyle Isherwood was in the Okemo Valley TV studio to tell us about this very unique mission.
All right, hi everybody, and today we have a special guest in our studio, and I want to welcome Kyle Isherwood, who's here on behalf of Vermont Fish and Wildlife Department, and he's a game warden serving our local district and our region.
Correct. I cover the Londonderry district. So I have 8 towns: Londonderry, Andover, Weston, Peru, Stratton, Winhall, Landgrove, and Wyndham.
Sounds like a pretty big and rural and substantially forested area.
Correct. Yeah.
So this probably keeps you busy.
Yep. I have about 300 square miles and not a single stoplight in my district. There's one blinking light at the intersection of Route 100 and Route 11, and that's it.
Wow. So, and we'll get into, I think we'll spend a little bit of time and talk about what your day-to-day looks like as a game warden, what the Fish and Wildlife Department, what its mission, what its job and is in more general terms. But you're here specifically today because something very unique happened just down the road here in Ludlow that you were that you responded to recently. You want to talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Yeah.
So what happened?
On January 22nd, my phone rang 6:45 in the morning, which is not uncommon. My phone rings all times, day and night. I was told that there was a moose stuck in a train railroad bridge, which is a first for me. Never heard anything like that before. And it was right near the intersection of Route 131 and 103, right near the Cavendish-Ludlow town line.
I remember seeing the commotion as I was actually driving into work that day in Ludlow, and I saw Green Mountain Railroad was out there. There was a crane of some sort, and I didn't think much of it. I just said, oh, they must be working on the tracks.
Yeah.
And then I caught on the news later
Kind of were working on the tracks.
But, yeah, they were.
Yeah.
Yeah, so that must have been pretty wild.
Right, so when I got there shortly after 7 o'clock, it was myself and another warden. We brainstormed how we were going to resolve this situation. The moose was clearly stuck. We both approached it on the tracks, and a normal moose would have gotten up if it was laying down and gone the other direction. This moose struggled, and both of its rear legs were visibly stuck in between the two of the ties, those wooden kind of logs that
the railroad ties.
Yeah, exactly. And they're gaps, and its hooves were straight through, dangling over the Black River.
Was it in distress?
It struggled a couple times when it could see us. Otherwise, it just laid there. It knew it was stuck, and I don't know what it tried and kind of gave up at that point.
Can't imagine there's anything in your training that prepares you specifically for something like this. So what do you do? How do you respond?
We, as I was saying, we brainstormed different ways we might be able to free this moose. In worst case scenario, we were prepared to dispatch it because we didn't want to see the moose suffer any longer or reach its eventual death, which would have been by a train, which would have been not a good way to go.
Not good for anybody.
No. And so dispatching injured animals or animals in situations like that where it's unsafe for the rescuer, impossible to rescue, is not my favorite part of the job. It's not what we signed up to do, but it is a necessary part, and it's often the humane route to take. But this moose was lucky, and we were able to make a plan that we thought had a good chance of rescuing this moose. This plan involved getting the railroad, the Vermont railway system, to help us out, which they did, and they were very timely. They showed up right away with a kind of a half truck, half train vehicle, so it could go on the tracks, but it also could drive on the road. the moose was shot with the tranquilizer, and within 5 to 10 minutes, it was out. Still breathing, still very much alive, but not conscious and not stressing any more than it was. From there, we didn't know how bad the injuries were going to be to the legs. We estimated that it was a bull moose, even though it didn't have antlers. It had dropped its antlers. They shed them every year. And we estimated somewhere around 700 to 800 pounds. Springfield Fire Department let us use this yellow tarp with handles on it, which we were able to use to lift the moose. And they used that for people and moving heavier objects. And then the town of Cavendish helped as well. We used the crane right away, and we were able to use tow straps from the trucks to lift it up slightly enough to get the yellow tarp underneath it and get the legs out from trapped between the ties. And from there, we quickly assessed the legs to make sure there wasn't obvious breaks. We don't have a vet that would take a full-grown moose, so
Probably not one in the area.
and we don't want to let it suffer with broken legs. But luckily, we didn't feel any breaks. Everything looked fine. There's a small abrasion on the inside of one of its legs, which can be expected from struggling in between two pieces of wood for who knows how long. The last train we knew came through around 5 o'clock the night before, so if that
Could have been any time.
it could
in that
be any
12-hour
time
period,
between
right?
about 7 p.m. to 7 a.m. that it got stuck. There was snow going across the tracks, which probably made it look like it was a solid pathway, like a cattle guard. I don't think a moose would cross when it was just the bridge. But I think the snow kind of tricked it, thinking it was a solid path.
And I gotta think. I mean, so when you finally released it, where did it? How far away did it get?
So once we got it out using the tarp, we were able to lift the moose all the way up into the bed of the truck that had the crane with it. And we drove it maybe 10 minutes away.
Oh, okay.
Up into the Proctor Piper State Forest, which is just kind of south and east of where we were.
Right.
And we put the reversal drug into it at that point, and within 5 minutes it was waking up, looking around, and it stood up. And once it stood up, we knew that it was going to be good because it used both of its back legs, and there's no sign of any internal injuries there. And then it walked off. Yeah.
It's incredible.
Yeah, it was pretty cool.
Yeah. Well, congratulations. Mission accomplished.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, that's probably the first time anybody's ever heard of such a thing.
It's first for us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I mean, being an unusual job in and of itself, I got to think that just in general, knowing about the moose population in the area, it is in decline. Is that correct?
It is correct. Yeah, that is correct.
That's a pretty busy area where you were at that intersection.
Absolutely. So. Yeah. And we're fortunate around this area to have lots of protected landscape, state forest, the national forest, lots of big chunks of woods for moose to survive. But overall, the moose population is not doing well. It's no secret that it's in decline. And we're going to be doing everything we can as a department to reverse the decline and kind of have a steady, stable moose population for the future.
And I got to think, given your district and how rural it is and wooded it is, you must see more moose out there than most of us. I know I personally used to see quite a few.
Right.
On a fairly regular basis, and haven't seen a single one in the wild around here in a few years.
Right. I'm lucky. I get to spend my day out in the woods and on the back roads and patrolling, whether it's via truck or snowmobile, depending on the season. And I do get to see moose, probably more than the normal person, but not as much as I'd like. I wish I could see more.
Any idea what do you have any data for us in terms of the population?
I don't have any specific numbers, and it varies from year to year depending on how rough the winter was, and how many got hit by cars and whatnot, which is a tough way for the moose to go and a preventable way. But the moose are struggling for two main reasons in Vermont, and it's brainworm and winter ticks. The winter ticks are not as much an issue in southern Vermont as it is up in the Northeast Kingdom, mostly because we don't have the moose density that they do up there. So
Which, and you were saying before, it's approximately 1 per square mile.
up there, there's greater than 1 moose per square mile, so there's a lot more moose up there. We're well below that population density in southern Vermont, which is good for the moose in some ways because the ticks can't survive without dense moose population. So we're not really struggling with the winter tick issue down here like they are in the Northeast Kingdom. This past year, we had stopped all moose hunting, so we gave the moose a break for the year for multiple reasons. But this year, we've proposed to reintroduce the hunt, specifically in the very corner of the Northeast Kingdom, where that moose population density is above 1 per square mile. And that will ideally bring the moose population density down slightly, which will in turn bring the tick density down and give future moose a better opportunity to survive.
And how would that work logistically? You'd have to draw an imaginary boundary saying you can hunt within this boundary but not outside.
So those boundaries are already set. They're called our wildlife management units.
Okay.
So the whole state's broken up into many units that are defined with highways, state highways. So for example, the Route 100 corridor is often a boundary line between between that, and then other roads create other boundaries. So and those maps are available online.
So when you've proposed to reintroduce the moose hunt in which district?
It's WMUE, which is the very Northeast Kingdom, very corner of the kingdom, and that I believe it's going to be 55 permits. So. And with that, not everyone that goes out with the moose permit is going to get a moose. So we estimate somewhere between 30 and 40 successful.
So you're reintroducing it, but slowly.
Right. It's a very, at our peak, we had over 1,000 permits issued. So 55 is very small in the grand scheme of moose hunting permits available.
And but is it just the winter ticks, or are deer ticks also a problem?
No, it's the winter ticks for the moose, and especially the calves. So the yearling moose in their first year, they can really get infested with these ticks. Tens, if not hundreds of thousands of ticks. And not only is blood loss an issue because the ticks are sucking the blood out of the moose, but it's itchy. It's an irritation for them, so they'll rub up against spruce and fir trees trying to scrape off all the ticks, which helps, but it also takes off all their hair. And although we don't get as many as we did 20 years ago, we still get nights that drop down to minus 20, minus 30 degrees, and without any hair, no coat on, these moose freeze to death and die of exposure.
Jeez.
So it's a rough way to go.
Yeah.
Our best method to prevent the spread and the infestation of ticks is to lower the density to less than 1 per square mile. And that's why we're proposing the hunt, which is going to go through a couple meetings. And if somebody's very passionate one way or the other, they can attend a meeting and discuss with the biologists, which is all science-based, and go from there. Yeah, down here, brainworm is more of an issue for the moose.
Can you describe what brainworm is?
Yeah,
it's impacting the moose population.
It's a parasite that gets into the moose's brain and kind of eats away at it. The life cycle of the parasite is it usually gets into a snail, and then when the moose are eating bark off of stripping bark off of trees, generally striped maple. They'll ingest the snail, which has the parasite, and it gets into their brain from there. And the moose kind of starts going crazy with its brain getting eaten away. And the big signs and symptoms we look for is kind of a head tilt for the moose, and then it starts walking in circles. And the tighter the circle, the more kind of closer to death that moose is, unfortunately. So we monitor carefully. We don't want that disease to spread any more than it already has. And if anyone sees a moose that's acting strange, certainly call your local state game warden, and they can address it.
The very unique moose story is what launched us into this whole discussion about the moose population. But let's talk in more general terms about what does a game warden do, and specifically in your district?
Absolutely.
What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so the best part of my job is every day is different. And with that, every month to month is different as the seasons change. So what I'm doing, let's say tomorrow, is going to be totally different than what I'm going to be doing in mid-July, which is totally different than what I'm doing during deer season in November. We have about 35, 36 field game wardens and maybe 6 other supervisory game wardens. And each warden is assigned a district, which is made up of somewhere between 6 and 10 towns that they're responsible for. There's only one game warden per district, and it's that warden's job to protect all the natural resources and the wildlife and help mitigate conflicts that arise between humans and wildlife. Right now, my job is mostly focused on making sure people are following the ice fishing regulations, which recently changed, specifically the bait fish that anglers can use to go ice fishing with. And then snowmobile patrol is the other big thing right now. We got lots of vast trails that we patrol and make sure people are both riding safely, not cutting corners, not going way too much over the speed limit, and are sober while they're doing that, because
And there's
they
a
can
lot
be
of
dangerous.
vast trails in your district.
Correct. Yeah.
So you on a snow machine a lot?
I do. Yeah. I'm issued one, and I get to ride it all the time. And it's popular, and it's great, and it's fun to be out there and seeing everybody having fun as long as they're doing it right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And how's the winter been? I know the snow's been a little spotty.
Yeah, it was a slow start.
Yeah.
I didn't get much snowmobiling in until February, but this past month has been pretty good with snow.
Everyone behaving themselves out there?
Yep, for the most part. You're going to find people that think that they can get away with not buying their stickers, not buying the VAST TMA, or registering their snowmobile with the state, which are both requirements to be on the trails. And so that's a big part. And then making sure people are riding safely. Mm-hmm. And just our presence out there tends to help quite a bit. Mm-hmm. And so the more I can be out there, the better it is for everybody.
Mm-hmm. Okay, we just spent some time earlier talking about the moose population being in decline, but the black bear population in this area seems to be on the rise. Is that a safe assessment?
Yeah, it is. We have a very healthy population of black bear, which is a good thing. It means our forests are healthy. But at the same time, as humans kind of expand more and more into their habitat, the conflicts are going to arise more and more.
There does seem to be a lot more human-bear interaction.
Correct.
So it's part of your job, managing that and educating people.
It's a huge part of my job, especially May, June, July, all the way until they go back into hibernation. And
everybody take their feeders in. And
right. So that's a big start, is taking bird feeders down. We don't want bears to realize that humans equal food, because a fed bear is a dead bear. It's a saying we use.
At least it's not a fed bear, it's a dead human.
Right. And although it's possible, it's very unlikely that a black bear is going to attack a human. So that's not something that I tell people to worry about. But bears are hungry. They're just slept for the last 4 or 5, 6 months. And there's not a lot of natural food in the woods when they wake up. Leaves are just starting to get green. There's not a lot of fruit out there. There's no raspberries aren't coming in yet. Blackberries aren't. It's tough for them. But there's a dumpster with a lot of good smells coming from it, or there's a bird feeder full of sunflower seed.
Bins, especially now.
Compost bins.
Come July 1, everybody's supposed to be composting.
Correct.
Yeah, right? So
that's correct. So, yes, I don't foresee the bear issues, especially in my area, dropping at all. That being said, the more I can do with education and teaching people proper ways to mitigate these problems, the less I'm going to have to do and deal with when bears start getting acclimated to going to houses and eating human food. Most of my problems are bear-proofing dumpsters. Just people putting trash outside is not acceptable in Vermont, especially our area of Vermont. They have an incredible sense of smell, and they'll come and destroy that. And it's no fun for the bear. It's teaching the bear bad behavior. It's also no fun for the person who has to clean up garbage strewn all over the yard. Bears will start becoming more and more confident as they have a better and better food source, and they might start being more protective over it. And that's when we have to step in and deal with the issue.
Mm-hmm. So what's the greatest challenge you face as a game warden in this district?
But the biggest challenge for me, I think any game warden, our goal is to stop the illegal taking of wildlife. That's our biggest goal.
Poaching an issue in this area?
Oh, absolutely. Yep. Poaching is an issue. Yep.
Yeah.
And
how many arrests have you made in the last, this past hunting season?
Oh, several, including taking deer at night. So it happens. So not necessarily shooting deer at night is not the only thing we're looking for. People shooting from the road during the regular season, they might have their license and their proper tag. But most roads, you have to be 25 feet away off of the road. And a lot of people do need meat to feed their family, and I get that. But they can reach out to their local game warden, and we can bring them almost an endless supply of road-killed meat. That's just the same. I'll field dress the deer for them. I'll bring it right to their house. And so I don't really count that as an excuse because there's other ways that we can get them the wild game to help feed their families.
It's a service not everyone, they may not know about that.
No, not everyone does, but plenty of people do. I don't have a short list, and it's good. I don't want any of the meat to go to waste. And it's the same. If I have to seize a deer from somebody, I'll try to get it to somebody else that could use it. And then looking at the when I have to step in as a law enforcement officer because there was a violation for it with taking deer. I'm going to be looking at a variety of factors, whether it was an intentional violation, meaning that person knew what they were doing, they knew they were breaking the law, and they did it anyway, or an unintentional violator. I did not know that was a law. I'm sorry. I thought I was way further off the road than I was. And I take that into consideration when I'm going to address the issue.
So there's a little bit of flexibility.
Absolutely. And we work with our state's attorneys, who are the prosecutors for all the criminal cases in the state, and explain to them that this is what happened, this is what I think would be a reasonable outcome, and we'll go from there. But yeah, I try to treat everybody the way I don't want to be treated. And sure, there are people that are intentional violators that try to get away with it and will do everything they can to get away with it because their hunting license means more to them than a lot of stuff. And I get that too. I love my hunting license, and I love the ability to go out and use it and hunt with it. But you have to be doing it right and ethically.
So does the department have any kind of programs or marketing campaigns around this to help you combat this challenge?
We do. So we have Operation Game Thief, which is a great tool that we use. And it's where people can call in anonymous tips that we can use to try to catch whatever they witnessed, whatever violation they witnessed. And so it's helpful when it's, somebody's neighbor that they want to report, that they heard a gunshot from the neighbor's house last night. The sooner we get the report, the better, because that's the higher chance we're going to be able to make a case out of it. So that's one way one tool we use to kind of help us do our job, because there's only one of me for 300 square miles, and I can't be everywhere at once. So the more eyes and ears I have out there is the better for everybody and for all of our resources.
Let's talk in more general terms about what does a game warden do, and specifically in your district?
Absolutely.
What does your day-to-day look like?
Yeah, so the best part of my job is every day is different. And with that, every month to month is different as the seasons change. So what I'm doing, let's say tomorrow, is going to be totally different than what I'm going to be doing in mid-July, which is totally different than what I'm doing during deer season in November. We have about 35, 36 field game wardens and maybe 6 other supervisory game wardens. And each warden is assigned a district, which is made up of somewhere between 6 and 10 towns that they're responsible for. There's only one game warden per district, and it's that warden's job to protect all the natural resources and the wildlife, and help mitigate conflicts that arise between humans and wildlife.
Kyle, I want to thank you for coming by today and sharing the story
Absolutely.
about the Ludlow moose.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for having me.
Production services by Okemo Valley TV.